Hey, kia ora and welcome everybody to another episode of Big Life Mindset. If you're watching this video, then congratulations. You are joining me on my very first video podcast. It's actually a working example of exactly what I'm going to be talking about and some of these tips and tricks that I'm going to share with you today. So let's get straight into it. Today's all about a technique that I use that has changed my life so much. And it's such a powerful technique that it's one of those things that you really have to start using this thing. Or I would encourage you to start using this technique, put it that way. Let's get to it. It's called the Learn Fast Mindset. Learn Fast Mindset. Now, I use this thing when I'm learning how to swim, when I'm in the office, when I'm getting beat up at jiu-jitsu, parenting, just any facet of my life where I want to make progress and I want to make it really quickly, then this is the technique that I employ. Okay, so what is a Learn Fast mindset? Now, if you've been in an office environment or you've been around project management and agile thinking, then you would have heard the concept of fail fast methodology. Now, fail fast methodology is basically where you do something often, share it frequently, and you don't overcommit to it, so that if you're going to make a mistake, if it's going to fail, it's going to fail fast. Who would have thought, right? Now, the reason I've switched that out to a learn fast methodology or learn fast mindset is because there are far too many negative connotations that come with the words fail and failure. You know, if you were to turn up to work on Monday and say, hey boss, this week I'm going to fail lots. I'm going to make lots of little failures. You're cool with that. Come Friday, you're probably going to get the word, hey, thanks for being here, but pack your stuff. Don't worry about coming in on Monday. Totally understandable. If you were to flip that around and say, this week we're going to have lots of little learnings, and they're going to help us progress. Now, it's exactly the same concept, except you've washed away all that negativity that comes with the words fail and failure, and you've replaced them with learning and learning opportunities. We talk about being okay with mistakes, and everyone says, oh, no, it's good to make mistakes. But the reality of it is that no one likes making mistakes. No one that I know anyway. And I mean, if I could be living a mistake-free life, it would be appealing. But ultimately, I realize it's not real. It's not a true sense of what's going on in the world, right? Or not in my life anyway. So with this learn fast mindset, it's really about understanding being able to share something and sharing it openly and sharing it often without the fear of failure. Okay, so what is a learn fast mindset? Let's get down to it. A learn fast mindset is something that's done in the knowledge that this thing that you're working on is incomplete. It's imperfect. And you're simply putting a stake in the sand, knowing this, and then knowing that it'll need to be moved around and improved. A learn fast mindset means that you can quickly iterate, and those iterations become embedded into a process that inevitably push you towards being successful. Why is that even important? Well, I'm assuming you've heard this phrase, perfection is the enemy of progress. Now, if you haven't heard this phrase, make it a part of your everyday language. Perfection is the enemy of progress. Now, far too often we're worried about this piece of work that we're going to do and about putting it out there. And the fear that we have is how it's going to be judged, and in turn, how we're going to be judged. Now, one thing that I've found throughout my whole life, still do to a lesser degree, quite challenging, is if somebody criticizes a piece of work that I do, I reflect it personally. And the more I've invested in that piece of work, the more I take it personally. Now, if I look at that, eventually I'm only going to want to do something that in my mind is absolutely perfect, and what I think the other person is going to think is absolutely perfect as well. Now, that is a progress killer. That will stop you dead in your tracks 10 times out of 10, because you're never going to be all things to everybody. One way to circumvent this, and one way this technique that I'm talking about, how this helps me get around that and get around my own overthinking, is by sharing the small pieces of work often enough that I can get a gauge on whether it's working or not working and why. Now, when I look at how much time I'm going to commit on something, I don't want to be working on something for 40 hours and then find out at the end of it that's the wrong thing. What I want to do is I want to work on it for 20 minutes and then know straight away, hey, am I heading in the right direction or not? Because I don't want to waste that other 39 hours and 40 minutes chasing after the wrong thing, right? So here's an example of how I used Learn Fast Mindset in an office environment. I got asked to do this. I was at this big insurance company, and I got asked to do this presentation for one of the senior leadership. Now, there were, between that person and where I sat on the food chain, there was maybe 3 or 4 different managers, each with their own teams, each always looking upwards to this one person that had asked for this presentation. Now, as soon as I knew that this person was accountable for this piece of work, one technique I used, which is slightly off, and I'll talk to it later on so you get a better understanding of it. But one thing I did was I identified who that key decision maker was, and then I sat down with them and I said, hey, look, I understand you've commissioned this piece of work. I'm going to be the person that's putting this together for you. I just needed to know, based on these scratchings that I've done on this piece of paper, before I overcommit my time and yours, is this what you're thinking? That one act of using this, of sharing what I had, this learn fast principle, meant that rather than trying to come up with something that was in this area, the manager just said, oh, that's cool, but no, it actually looks like this. And that one simple act meant all of this other stuff just became noise, right? My field of focus was right here. Now, that also meant that every single conversation I had after that with anybody else, I could always say, we'll call him John, I could always say, so I spoke to John, and while I recognize that what you are looking at is over there, he's actually already advised me that it's here. Now, I did this early on so that every conversation meant it was a lot more focused as well, because you're always going to have people that are second guessing and reinterpreting and translating and whatever else. But just by getting it from the horse's mouth, literally scratched down on a piece of paper, just cut away all of that and allowed everybody to channel their energy into getting the thing that John actually wanted. Each time I had a conversation with a manager prior to actually getting that presentation done, it meant that we knew where we were starting, we knew where our starting point was. And so every time they wanted to refine that, it was within that parameter, right? So if the next time I took a piece of paper to the manager above me, I said, hey, look, this is what I'm thinking. It just kept narrowing that field of focus until eventually, can you ever see me? Eventually it was just like, bang, laser pointer, because I kept sharing often, and I wasn't waiting until the very end before I said, hey, here's this thing that I've created. And then they would just turn around and say, bro, why did you do that for? That was way off course. There you go. I kid you not, that is one of, I've lost count of how many times I've employed this technique, and it's just come off each and every time. One of those challenges that you've probably identified is that it actually takes quite a lot of courage to share your work, irrespective of whether it's draft or it's at its fully polished state. To reiterate a point is that the more you emotionally invest in this, and the more time and energy you invest in this thing, trying to make it perfect, the harder it's going to be to make any progress on it. The harder it's going to be to evolve it, and the harder it is going to be to distance yourself from the work, the work from the artist, the art from the artist. So that's where this learn fast mindset comes into play. Now, a key principle of this technique is that you socialize with people, that's what you're doing. Part of that kind of brick wall that we come up against, where we have this fear of failure and this fear of being judged and whatnot, is that we think we operate in a silo, but we're actually really connected with everybody else and their interactions with our work. So if you want to use this technique, and I strongly encourage you that you do, is let people know that's what you're doing. Let people know, hey, what I'm hoping to do here is just by quickly sketching something or quickly socializing an idea with you, you can help guide me whether this is actually the thing that we want or not. By doing that, it lowers those expectations. It helps manage those expectations of what people are expecting. It also means that the feedback you get is of a better quality feedback. It should be better quality feedback, because people feel more comfortable adding and providing constructive criticism to something that is in development. If you go, here's the finished product, good or bad, it's really hard for them to, here's the finished product, what do you think? They're just looking at good or bad. They're not really, and this is proven by nerds around the world, they're less likely to recommend changes that are going to improve it the more polished it looks. So you really can sleepwalk your way into a situation where you've worked on something for 2 months and you get to the end, and because you haven't released it enough, because you haven't given it enough oxygen, by the time you get to that end point, no one's really had an opportunity to help reshape what it should look like. And you get to the end stage, hey, look what I made. And once again, they're just like, man, that is so far out. Pack your bags, don't worry about Monday. All good. So if you value your time, and I'm assuming you do, then use this technique. If you're paid by the hour, then this becomes even more important, because time is money. Super cliche, but it is. But also that time is something that you're not going to be able to get back. And so you want to know that whatever you're spending your time on is exactly the thing that needs to happen and is going to keep you progressing towards where you want to be. Okay, thank you so much for joining me, everybody. I really appreciate you taking your time. Once again, this is a good example. Like, you can't actually see what's off screen here, but I have got shit everywhere. I kid you not, there's boxes and all sorts of stuff going on. But for me, I didn't want to stop progressing by waiting for this thing to be perfect. I want to do this on one shot, get it out the way, and then I'll learn for next time and say, hey, you know what, Eddie, the next time I go to do this, this is what I can do differently. And also I'll look to the feedback that people are providing and say, hey, look, this maybe this didn't work, or maybe this part really did work. So, that's where I'm at. That's how it works. This is what Learn Fast Mindset looks like in the real world. I can't see if you can tell, my palms are sweaty from this whole experience, but I'm so glad that I did it, because now that I've shared this, I know how I can improve next time, and I can take that feedback on board as well. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Once again, as always, please click follow and subscribe. Take that 15 seconds to do it. And I really do appreciate when people do follow and subscribe, because it's kind of a recognition, I guess, that the value I'm adding to your life is worth it. All good. Until next time, peace out.